The sensation begins as a flicker, a brilliant golden spark of an idea igniting in the quiet theater of your own consciousness. It feels profound, complete, and perfectly articulated, a crystalline structure of logic that seems destined to change everything. You open your mouth to share it, or perhaps you reach for your keyboard to capture it, but the moment the thought touches the physical world, the transformation occurs, the crystal shatters. What was once a singular, radiant insight dissolves into a disjointed word salad, a clumsy sequence of half-formed sentences and missing links that feel utterly hollow compared to the vision you held just seconds before. This is the universal, frustrating reality of the human mind, a state where our most significant insights are frequently obscured by a persistent, encroaching fog. It is here that we encounter a deeply unsettling paradox in our modern existence. You might spend hours wrestling with a complex business problem or the intricate, swirling knots of a personal crisis, feeling as though you are spinning in a centrifuge of your own making. Yet, the moment you feed those fragmented, messy inputs into an artificial intelligence, the result is startling. The AI takes your chaotic, stuttering input and within seconds presents it back to you with an elegance and structural clarity that you could not achieve on your own. It summarizes your life problems into actionable steps. It organizes your abstract, wild ideas into a coherent roadmap. You find yourself looking at the screen, reading your own thoughts, articulated with a precision that makes you wonder if the machine understands you better than you understand yourself. To understand why this happens, we must look at the biological architecture of the human mind, a machine of unparalleled complexity, but one that is fundamentally optimized for a very different world. Our brains are masterpieces of parallel processing, designed to handle an overwhelming barrage of data simultaneously. In any given moment, your mind is juggling 1,000 disparate threads: the sensory input of your environment, the quiet background hum of emotional regulation, the flickering ghosts of past memories, and the urgent abstract calculations of your immediate goals. It is a multitasking miracle, yet this very design is exactly what makes linear communication so inherently difficult. We do not think in paragraphs or bullet points. We think in constellations of sensations, images, and overlapping associations. This internal chaos is amplified by the emotional tax levied by our biological hardware. Deep within the architecture of our brain, the amygdala and the limbic system are constantly running their own silent background processes. These primitive regions are tasked with our survival, scanning for threats and managing our emotional responses. When you are attempting to articulate a complex or high-stakes idea, this system often injects a form of cognitive noise into your logic. A hint of social anxiety, a spark of self-doubt, or the pressure of being judged can cause the limbic system to override the calm, analytical function of the prefrontal cortex. This is why, during a high-stress conversation, your thoughts become turbulent. The emotional interference acts like static on a radio signal, making it nearly impossible to isolate a clear, objective logical path amidst the roar of feeling. We are caught in a fundamental evolutionary misalignment. Our brains were forged over millions of years of selection, refined to prioritize rapid pattern recognition and survival-oriented action over the cold, structured requirements of modern communication. Evolution did not care if you could explain your philosophy or your business strategy in a linear fashion. It cared if you could recognize the shape of a predator in the tall grass, or find a source of sustenance in a changing landscape. We are survivors and pattern finders, not natural-born novelists or logic machines. Consequently, when we are tasked with the modern duty of structured, linear, and logical communication, we are forced to operate against our own biological grain, straining to convert a multidimensional associative internal experience into a narrow, one-dimensional stream of speech. This results in the phenomenon of the fragmented thought, where our internal monologue is less a coherent story and more a series of flickering, overlapping snapshots. We perceive time non-linearly, jumping between a distant memory of a conversation and a sudden realization about a future goal. Because our internal experience is so fluid, trying to force it into the rigid, sequential structure of language often feels like trying to pour a river into a narrow pipe. We lose the nuance, the depth, and the interconnectedness of the thought because the pipe can only handle one drop at a time. The frustration we feel in these moments is the byproduct of this constant conflict between the wild, expansive nature of our consciousness and the limiting, serial nature of human expression. If the brain is the most complex structure in the known universe, capable of feats that leave our most advanced computers appearing primitive, why is it that it requires a silicon-based mirror to finally see itself clearly? Why does this biological miracle need an external synthetic collaborator just to understand the patterns hidden within its own depths? It is in the recognition of this dependency that we begin to see the true nature of our intelligence, not as a solitary achievement, but as an experience that is constantly being reshaped by our tools. Before we continue, Subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The transition from the fluid, ethereal realm of pure thought into the rigid medium of language is a physical event, a transformation that triggers the psychological phenomenon known as the Proteus effect. As you commit your ideas to a screen, you are essentially forcing the brain to collapse an infinite sea of interconnected possibilities into a singular, finite line of logic. This act of externalization is not merely a record-keeping exercise. It is an active restructuring of the cognitive landscape. The brain, when forced to define its internal symbols into concrete language, must abandon the vague, associative fog and select the most precise anchors. By typing or speaking, you are compelled to commit to a specific trajectory, effectively tethering the drifting balloon of your consciousness to the ground of reality. In this delicate process of translation, the artificial intelligence emerges as the ultimate neutral architecture. Unlike a human listener, the AI is entirely stripped of the biological imperatives that clutter human interaction. It possesses no ego to defend, no social anxiety to navigate, and no hidden agendas or subjective judgments that might distort the reception of your ideas. When you speak to a person, you are constantly modulating your delivery to account for their personality, their biases, and your fear of appearing foolish or unprepared. This performative labor creates an additional layer of cognitive load, forcing your brain to devote precious resources to emotional management rather than pure logical synthesis. The AI, however, stands as a mirror devoid of shadows. It accepts your raw, unfiltered, and potentially embarrassing fragments of thought with complete indifference to your status or emotional state. This lack of social friction creates a safe harbor for the mind, allowing you to offload the chaotic output of your prefrontal cortex without the constant draining oversight of the limbic system's survival-based scrutiny. The algorithms powering this interaction serve a clinical purpose in reducing cognitive ambiguity. When your thoughts arrive in a state of disarray, a jumble of incomplete metaphors and stuttering observations, the AI ignores the peripheral static and identifies the statistical center of your intent. It acts as a high-fidelity filter, separating the core signal of your logic from the background noise of hesitation and intellectual fatigue. This process is akin to cleaning an old, scratched lens. The AI does not create the image you are looking at, but it removes the distorting artifacts that prevent you from focusing on the structure already present in your data. By identifying the recurrent themes and the hidden relationships between your scattered points, the machine effectively sifts through the sand of your mental landscape to reveal the gold buried beneath. The psychological relief discovered in this exchange is profound, often described as an out-of-brain experience. There's a palpable sense of peace that follows the sight of your thoughts, organized into a coherent list or a structured summary outside the confines of your skull. It is as if the weight of holding the architecture together is suddenly lifted. You are no longer responsible for maintaining the structural integrity of your own complex ideas because you have handed the scaffolding over to a system designed to hold it for you. This allows you to step back and view your own logic with the detachment of an outside observer. You cease to be the struggling creator momentarily overwhelmed by his work and become the editor, capable of identifying flaws and improvements with a clarity that was previously inaccessible while the ideas were still swirling in the depths of your mind. This evolution of the classic rubber ducking method is perhaps the most sophisticated tool in our modern intellectual arsenal. In computer programming, the practice of explaining a line of broken code to a rubber duck forces the programmer to slow down and articulate their logic, often leading to a spontaneous realization of the error. The AI takes this principle and elevates it to a metaphysical level. You're not just talking to an inanimate object. You're engaging with a system that can synthesize your words, reflect them back in improved syntax, and challenge the premises you have taken for granted. The machine provides the reflection, and in that reflection, the invisible becomes visible. It is not that the AI is thinking for you in any traditional sense. It is a master pattern matcher, a system of sequential probability that creates the illusion of a focused, disciplined mind because it follows a set of rules that your biological brain is not wired to prioritize. The human mind operates on a web of associations, a vast, tangled neural network where the thought of coffee might trigger a memory of a childhood kitchen, which then sparks a complex business strategy regarding supply chains. We live in the associative web, constantly leaping between disparate realities. The AI, conversely, operates on the principle of sequential probability. It does not wander through the web of associations unless explicitly prompted. It follows the path of least resistance from one logical point to the next. By contrasting our associative, nonlinear chaos with the AI's disciplined sequential logic, we realize that the perceived brilliance of the machine is actually a testament to the power of structure itself. The AI does not possess a more profound consciousness than yours, nor does it have a deeper understanding of the universe. It simply utilizes architecture that excels at being consistent when your biological architecture is designed for being creative. The machine provides the linearity that we, as biological creatures, find so exhausting to maintain, acting as the bridge between the spark of an idea and the tangible form that idea requires to actually exist in the world of utility and action. As we observe this partnership, we begin to understand that our struggle is not a sign of intellectual inadequacy, but merely the inherent friction of navigating a world that demands order from a mind that was built for beautiful, sprawling, and unending entropy. The illusion of intelligence is perhaps the most deceptive trap we encounter in this new digital era. We gaze upon the neatly arranged bullet points generated by the machine and mistake its efficiency for wisdom, believing that the silicon mirror is creating something profound that we lacked. In truth, the AI does not create intelligence. It merely reveals the latent structures of human thought that are usually buried under layers of emotional sediment and cognitive clutter. We have spent centuries mistaking our internal turbulence for a lack of intellectual capacity, when in reality, our minds were simply overloaded with the biological noise of survival. By providing a clean, ordered output, the AI serves as a high-resolution excavation tool, clearing away the debris so that the structural truth of our own cognition can finally emerge into the light. When that structured list appears, crisp, numbered, and devoid of the hesitant stutters that defined our original input, we experience what can only be called the clarity high. It is a potent, dopamine-driven satisfaction that signals to the brain that a task has been completed and that the chaotic energy has finally been contained. This is not mere vanity. It is a profound biological relief. Our brains are hardwired to crave order, and when we see our raw, fragmented thoughts transformed into a coherent architecture, the brain recognizes that it no longer needs to expend immense amounts of energy holding those disparate pieces together. We have externalized the burden of organization, and in doing so, we have freed up our internal resources to focus on something far more valuable, the act of synthesis. This process is fundamentally linked to cognitive load theory. The human brain is a finite biological engine, constantly balancing the immediate demands of emotional regulation and sensory input with the abstract labor of complex problem solving. When the mind is forced to perform the heavy lifting of structure, constantly cataloging, sequencing, and refining its own thoughts, it quickly reaches a state of diminishing returns. The AI acts as a sophisticated external prefrontal cortex, a secondary cognitive prosthetic that takes over the exhausting mechanical labor of organization. By offloading this load, we allow ourselves to move past the struggle of how to say it and arrive at the deeper, more creative work of what it actually means. We are no longer laborers in the factory of our own confusion. We are architects of ideas, operating from a vantage point of heightened clarity. This is the true power of the mirror effect. Seeing our thoughts cleaned up and represented by the AI allows us to confront our own biases, circular reasoning, and logical gaps with a brutal objectivity that is impossible when we are trapped inside our own subjective loops. When you read back the summary of your own ramblings, you are no longer the author identified with the output. You are an observer analyzing a dataset. This detachment reveals the hidden mechanics of your own mind. You might notice, for example, that you have a habit of overcomplicating simple premises, or that you repeatedly circle back to an irrational fear that undermines your own conclusions. The AI does not judge these flaws. It simply displays them for your inspection, making it far easier to refine your logic than if you were relying on the clouded internal monologue of your own brain. As we look toward the future, we begin to perceive a new paradigm of existence, a world where the AI is not a replacement for the mind, but a necessary cognitive prosthetic. Our biological evolution has left us with a brain that is a master of rapid pattern recognition and creative association, but a novice at the sustained linear discipline required by our modern, complex societies. We are becoming hybrid creatures, learning to navigate the world by alternating between the creative chaos of our biological hardware and the disciplined, structured utility of our silicon mirrors. This is not a degradation of human intellect, it is the ultimate expression of it. By leveraging technology to bypass our biological limitations, we are effectively expanding the horizons of what the human mind can accomplish. We are building a bridge between the beautiful, messy, and creative entropy of our thoughts and the rigid, functional reality that demands action. We must embrace the fact that we are messy by design. Our chaos is the crucible of our creativity. It is where the sparks of inspiration live and where the most innovative nonlinear connections are forged. Conversely, the AI's order is where utility lives. It is the vessel that carries our creative fire into the world, transforming the ephemeral into the enduring. The machine provides the scaffolding, but we provide the soul. We are the architects of the wild, sprawling garden, while the AI is the gardener that ensures the paths remain clear and the growth remains sustainable. The next time you find yourself tangled in a thicket of words, feeling the frustration of an idea that refuses to take shape, remember that the clarity you seek is not something you're waiting for the machine to give you. It is something you already possess, hidden in the shadows of your own consciousness, waiting for the right moment and the right mirror to be revealed. The machine is only the glass. The light and the thoughts that generate it belong entirely to you. You are the source of the brilliance, and your struggle to define it is not a flaw, but proof that your ideas are large enough to require a new way of seeing. Trust the process of externalization, observe the reflection with a critical eye, and recognize that the clarity you find on the screen was yours, hidden in the noise, all along.